Sitapati Advaita Gosai Dayakara Sitapati Advaita Gosai Tava Kripa Bale Pai Chaitanya Nitai Tava Kripa Ha Swarup Sanatanam Rupa Raghunatha Bhatta Juga Shri Jivaha Prabhu Lokanatha Bhatta Juga Shri Jivaha Prabhu Lokanatha Daya Karo Shri Acharya Prabhu Srinivasa Daya Karo Shri Acharya Prabhu Srinivasa Ramachandra Sangha Mage Narottama Dasam Ramachandra Sangha Ramachandra Sanghamage Narottama Dasam Ramachandra Sanghamage Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Dayakara More Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Dayakara More Tama Vina Ke Dayalu Jagat Samsare Tama Vina Ke Dayalu Jagat Samsare Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Dayakara More Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Dayakara More Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Dayakara More Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Dayakara More Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Dayakara More Yes. My dear Lord Chaitanya, please be merciful to me, because who can be more merciful than your Lordship within these three worlds? Your incarnation is just to reclaim the conditioned fallen souls, but I assure you that you will not find a greater fallen soul than me. Therefore, my claim is first. This one?
My dear Advaita Prabhu, husband of Sita, you are so kind. Please be merciful to me. If you are kind to me, naturally Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda will also be kind to me.
O Swarup Damodar, personal secretary of Lord Chaitanya, O six Goswamis, O Rupa Goswami, O Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, O Lokanath Goswami, my beloved spiritual master Narottama Das, also prays for your mercy.
O Śrīmad-Acharya, successor to the six Goswamis, please be merciful to me. Narottam Das always desires the company of Ramachandra Chakravarti. Jai.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tera Banachari Jamuna Tera Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tera Banachari Jamuna Tera Brahmachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Ashtottara Shatashi Śrīmad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki Nitai Gaura Premanandi I just press the red button. Red. Red for dead. I think the battery's flat. Get no response. Okay. Oh, good. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 6, Prescribed Duties for Mankind. Chapter 1, The History of the Life of Ajamil. Text number 61. Drishtva tam kamaliptena Bahuna parirambitam Jagama hrichaya vasam Sahasaiva vimohitaha Drisvatam karma liptena Bahuna parirambitam Jagama hrichaya vasam Sahasaiva vimohitaha. Drishtvatam kamaliptena kamaliptena Bahuna parirambitam Jagama hrichaya vasam Sahasaiva vimohitaha Drishtvatam kamaliptena Bahuna parirambitam Jagama hrichaya vasam Drishvatam Kamaliptena Bahuna Parirambitam Jagamahrischaya Vasam Vimohita. Drishvatam Kamaliptena Bahuna Parirambitam Jagamarichaya Vasam Sahasaiva Vimohita. Ladies? Drishtva Bahuna Parirambitam Jagamarichaya Vasam Sahasaiva Vimohitaha. Drishtva, by seeing Tam, her, the prostitute, Kamaliptena, decorated with turmeric, to incite lusty desires, Bahuna, with the arm, Parirambitam, embraced, Jagama, went, Hrit Shaya, of lusty desires, within the heart, Vasham, under the control, Sahasa, suddenly, Eva, indeed, Vimohitaha, being illusioned. The Sudra, his arm decorated with turmeric powder, was embracing the prostitute. When Ajamil saw her, the dormant lusty desires in his heart awakened, and in illusion he fell under their control. Purport: it is said that if one's body is smeared with turmeric, it attracts the lusty desires of the opposite sex. The word Kama Liptena indicates that the Sudra was decorated with turmeric smeared on his body. Text 62. Stambayan atmanatmanam yavat sattvam yata shrutam na sasaka samadhatum mano madanave pitam. As far as possible, he patiently tried to remember the instructions of the Shastras, not even to see a woman. With the help of this knowledge and his intellect, he tried to control his lusty desires, but because of the force of Cupid within his heart, he failed to control his mind. Purport: unless one is very strong in knowledge, patience, and proper bodily, mental, and intellectual behavior, controlling one's lusty desires is extremely difficult. Thus, after seeing a man embracing a young woman and practically doing everything required for sex life, even a fully qualified Brahmana, as described above, could not control his lusty desires and restrain himself from pursuing them. Because of the force of materialistic life, to maintain self-control is extremely difficult unless one is specifically under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahayam Dadati Svapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinatarinam. This is a pivotal point in the story of Ajamil. He was brought up as a Brahmana in Brahminical culture, and but despite that training and education, he was unable to withstand the pushings of the mind and the senses. So it mentions here, stambayan, trying to control, atmana, by the intelligence, atmanam, the mind, yavat sattvam, as far as possible for him, yata shrutam, by remembering what he has heard. But he wasn't successful. So interesting. And Prabhupada mentions here in the purport, unless one is very strong in knowledge, patience, and proper bodily, mental, and intellectual behavior, controlling one's lusty desires is extremely difficult. Ooh, okay. That's as much as I can wear that. Otherwise I'll be exploding all throughout the rest of the class. I went to bed with prickly eyes last night, and that was just when I do the puja, I'm handling flowers, and then if I touch my face without having washed my hands, then I get a reaction to the magnolias, actually, and roses. So just in case you're worrying whether I've got COVID or not, I'm sneezing. It's probably not. It's the hay fever or the reaction to the flowers, which is... So, Thus, after seeing a man embracing a young woman and practically doing everything required for sex life, oh, this reminds me. When it rained, not yesterday, it was the day before, wasn't it? Yeah, Sunday. I went for a Japa walk and I was walking in the park, and there was this couple sitting on the park bench, and practically doing everything required for sex life. And they didn't see me. They didn't see me coming. But there was a strong wind, there was a strong wind. It was just before that there was a shower of, how there was showers of passing through. And so the wind blew my hat off. So I jumped, and then they saw me and they stopped. But it's an example of, this is some time ago in a yuga or at a time when these things were perhaps not so common. But these days, it's a common sight to see people either dressed or behaving in such a way so that they fulfill these requirements, right? Doing everything required for sex life. So it's disturbing. It's disturbing to see these things. Although for me that wasn't so disturbing, it was just odd. I was thinking, what are you doing, you guys? And so the importance of this culture of restraint and the culture of knowledge, Prabhupada mentions here. Knowledge, patience, right? And this is Brahminical culture, right? Samo, Damas, Tapa, Socham. Samo means being equipoised. Thanks, Adi. Probably haven't quite got to that stage, but thank you. Ooh. Dhamma means control, sense control. Samo, Dhammas, tapa, austerity, which is again controlling the senses, right? Controlling the mind and the senses. Samo, Dhammas, tapa, socham. And integral to this is cleanliness. Cleanliness externally, but also cleanliness internally. Right? So that what we're thinking, what we're meditating on, what we're contemplating, what we're desiring, this is also part of cleanliness. Samo Dhamma Tapassocham, what is it? Chantir, simplicity, leading an uncomplicated life. Chantir eva, what? Arjavam, yes, simplicity. Chantir, what's tolerance? Being tolerant. Arjavam, simplicity. Jnanam, the cultivation of knowledge. Vijnanam, and knowing how to apply that knowledge, right? How to apply the knowledge. Which it looks like that's what Ajamil lacked, right? He had the knowledge, but he wasn't able to apply it. Right? Because it mentions here, Atmanam, Yavat Sattvam, Yatha Shrutam, by remembering the instructions. That's not enough. Just having good advice or good instructions is not enough. One has to know how to apply them, right? How to actively engage. And here, proper bodily, mental, and intellectual behavior, which is the working senses, the knowledge acquiring senses, the mind, and also the intelligence needs to be fine-tuned, honed, in order to withstand the distractions and the pushings. Vacho vegam, manasakroda vegam, jiva vegam, udarapasta vegam, etan vegam, yo vishahetatira, savam apimam pritivim sasisyat. Mentioned by Rupa Goswami. So vacha vegam, the urge to speak and to talk about all sorts of things. Vacho vegam, manasakroda vegam, the pushing of the mind. And the mind and its enemies. Right, there are 6 enemies of the mind. Here is mentioned krodha only, right, but there's lust, greed, anger, illusion, envy. What's the other one? I mentioned greed. Pride. Yes, pride. I'm an advanced devotee. Until you're not. Yeah, pride. I'm a brahmana. I'm a senior devotee. You have to watch out for these things. Impelled by karma, especially desire, the mind. And krodha. Krodha especially because we have desires, and when they're not fulfilled, we then become frustrated. And then with frustration comes anger. And from anger, Krishna mentions bewilderment, loss of memory. And we fall into the bodily concept of life from anger. We can restrain desire and greed even. Greed is when we enjoy something but we want more. So that's also, sense gratification is dangerous. My Bhakti Shastri class on Saturday, the exercise was, we divided up into 4 groups, and the first group had to write up a list of the short-term benefits of sense gratification. And the long-term benefits of sense gratification was the second group. And then the third group was the disadvantages, the short-term disadvantages of sense gratification. And the fourth group was to make up a list of the long-term disadvantages of sense gratification. So that was an interesting discussion. And then we talked about what's our attitude towards sense gratification, because we must act, right? We must act. Sense gratification is a requirement. I don't know if you've noticed. But the pushing of the senses, and the senses need engagement, right? And it's why we have a varnashram system. It's to regulate sensual activity, sensual behavior. Can't be stopped. The workings of the knowledge acquiring senses and the working senses can't be stopped. The mind, you can't stop the working of the mind. So it's not a matter of stopping, but it's a matter of using the mind and the senses positively. Right? If you let children up to their own devices, what will they do? What happens if we let children up to their own devices, Yati? Don't know. Perhaps I should ask your mum. What happens if you leave children up to their own devices? Huh? They can get into trouble. Go and light a fire. Light a fire or play under the kitchen sink. Do the things that you're told not to do, basically. But, if we give children, and look, adult, anybody, positive engagement for the mind and the senses, then that action can be productive. That activity can be productive. And really that's the process, if you like, of sadhana bhakti. And why Rupa Goswami gives us, 64 items of devotional service. Do this, do this, do this. Don't do this, don't do this. So that we get a list of, here's all of the things that you can do. And it's practically unlimited. What we can do to positively engage the mind and the senses. But, so long as we've got, and we see it here, graphically in action, so long as we've got a material body, Vishaya vinivartante, niraharasya dehina, right? So long as you've got a material body, then there will be an inclination towards material activities without purification, right? Without getting a higher taste. Rasavajam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Param drishtva means a higher taste. So, the tendency to act is irrepressible, but the ability to engage that action in positive activities is the panacea or the cure, if you like. And so, we in the Varnashram system, we encourage for most people marriage, because the attraction, and we see it here, the attraction between a man and a woman is very strong, right? And in order to engage that positively, so that it's for the benefit of all, we have the institution of marriage. And even Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita of, what is it? Sex, according to religious principles, that I am, right? So, activities that are where we're engaged in service to Krishna rather than service to the mind and the senses is the proper engagement for the living entity. And that's purifying and also liberating. So one has to cultivate this knowledge. And this is mentioned. The study of the Vedas, effectively. Here. If we're to be strong in knowledge, then one has to regularly recite Vedic literature, right? Bhagavad Gita, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, for us, Nectar of Devotion, Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is our four main. So the regular recitation of Vedic literature, or the regular reading, the regular attendance in class. Also performing one's puja or one's bhajan for the Vaishnavas. Right? What's our daily bhajan? What's that? Yes. Before that. Yes. What's that prayer called? It's got 8 verses. There's a hint. Yes, Guruvashtakam. Go to the top of the class. Guruvashtakam. Right? And in reciting the Guruvashtakam, what are we meditating on? What are we meditating on when we're reciting the Guruvashtakam? How many here of you recite the Guruvashtakam regularly on a daily basis? Yeah, okay, good. So what are you doing? What are we doing when we recite the Guruvashtakam? What are we doing? Yes. And what else? That's true. Vande Guru Si Charanaravindaṁ. Yep, that's meditating on the lotus feet of the spiritual master. But what else? Because that's repeated like about 8 times. But what else? Yes, the process of devotional service. What else? Madhu. Yes. Yes, the different the behavior of a devotee, right? Which should be our behavior. Right? Samsara dava nalalida loka. The spiritual master is pouring benedictions on the residents of the material world by giving instructions, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish the blaze. So the spiritual master gives instructions to his disciples, or to anybody really, to extinguish the fire of conditional life. And lust, this is what's consuming our Jamil, right? He's been consumed by lust. And that lust is likened to a fire in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, right? So we're all burning up in the fire of material existence because of our desire to enjoy, right? So the spiritual master gives instructions. So all of these, the spiritual master engages in Sankirtan. Is that right? Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nritya Gita, singing and dancing. Vaditra Madhyan Manaso Rasena, he's relishing the mellows of bhakti. Relishing the mellows of bhakti. Do you relish the mellows of bhakti? Sometimes. Sometimes. When you chant Hare Krishna, do you feel pleasure? Yeah? Here's a simple one. Who enjoys breakfast? Yeah, there's relishing the mellows of bhakti, prasad. So we need to be. This is this cultivation of knowledge and meditation on all of these qualities of a devotee, so that we develop them also. This is the point, that we're developing this param drishtva, this higher taste, and we're becoming fixed in knowledge. So that when the pushing of the mind and the senses presents itself, we're able to, by the cultivation of knowledge and by the cultivation of bodily, mental and intellectual strength to withstand the pushings of the material energy, then when material desires present themselves by dint of that fixed up, if you like, or purified, anatta nivritti, removing these unwanted desires. And so when they arise, either they've gone, or if they arise, then it's just like, Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, like a stream that trickles into the ocean, or even a river that runs into the ocean, is just absorbed by the ocean. And that's because the devotee is swimming in the ocean of bhakti, right? Bhakti rasamrita sindhu. Swimming in the ocean of devotional service. And so he's not disturbed by the flow of desires. This is the idea. So good sadhana, good practice. So good bhajan. I mentioned this before. When you meet your friends, you usually say, "G'day, how's it going?" Right? But a devotee says, "How's your bhajan?" Right? Specifically, how's your bhajan? Because the material worlds are always up and down, right? But it's easily withstandable. It's easily tolerated by a devotee who's making advancement, who's relishing their sadhana. And so what is it? Pramana, following scriptural recommendations, which is what Ajamil was on the right track, right? He's remembering what he'd heard, but he wasn't strong enough, right? What's the other one? Theistic conduct. So, Abhyacharya, learning the Vedas, hearing from the Vedas, but then being able to put it into practice, put it into practical application of that learning, and then constant effort, right? Requires constant effort. It's not, something that you did yesterday and don't have to do today, right? It requires constant effort. The process of bhakti requires daily practice, daily effort. And then by, absorption and immersion in one's bhajan. That's why I say we should be meditating on the meanings Otherwise, we could be just parroting this stuff, right? The prayers of the Guru Vashtakam or the Guru Vandana, right? And, if we don't know what it is that we're saying, we're just like a bunch of parrots, right? Even chanting Hare Krishna. Chanting Hare Krishna like a parrot. Prabhupada mentions, what happens when you grab the bird by the neck? Just squawks, right? So, and that's this, unless one is very strong in knowledge, patience, proper bodily, mental and intellectual behavior. And that's our sadhana, our bhajan. And recitation of, as recommended, austerity of speech is to regularly recite the Vedic literature. Right. Many things. Austerity of the body is brahmacharya, right? Cleanliness, rising early, engaging the mind and the senses in devotional practices. Because at any moment, in this day and age, I don't have to tell you, wherever we go, practically speaking, there's a distraction of one sort or another, right? I don't know if you've noticed, but have you seen these things? Huh? They're designed to distract. They're designed to distract you from Krishna. Right? It's a unique device created to take money out of your bank account. That's really what it's for. It's presented as a great assist, right? But most of us have discovered it's not at all a great assist. It's the biggest distraction that you could ever put in your pocket. Although you can use it, right? I have the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Bhagavad Gita, the whole of the Veda base in my pocket. But what do? I go and look at Facebook. Although I have to admit, I don't. If you're a friend of mine on Facebook, I haven't gone anywhere. I just don't participate. And rarely do, as I mentioned the other day, sometimes Facebook calls me by email. Hey, Aniruddha, Prabhu, there's stuff going on over here. Why don't you have a look? We're missing you, which means we're not taking dollars out of your pocket. Please come over. Come over and see us. Come over and see your friends. I go over and see my friends and I think, God, what's this craziness going on here? I'm out of here. So cultivation of knowledge, cultivation of a life less distracted, right? Really, that's what we should be doing, ideally. Whilst there are many benefits, there's also, many dangers, actually. And why, we need to develop strongly, because, in one sense, the distraction is in our pocket. It's not what men and women are doing outside, although that's a distraction too. But very often we're carrying the distraction with us. And we pay so much attention to it that our children want to have one too, but just because of our behavior. Oh, why can't I have a mobile phone? Right? You've got one. Huh? Is that right, am I? Huh? Have you got one? You got your mum's? Yeah. What's that? Good boy. Keep it up. Yes. So, Ajamil, Prabhupada says here, was a fully qualified Brahmana. And that wasn't good enough. Right? That wasn't good enough. Could not control his lusty desires. And we're all living in an environment where materialistic life is practically everywhere. Isn't it? Realistically. Wherever you go. Whether you're in India or whether you're in Australia or wherever you are. It's all around us. Except in the temple. Except in the temple. It's amazing. We've been doing a lot of weddings. After COVID, everybody who couldn't get married wants to get married. So Chintarupa's just been doing every weekend pretty much a wedding. So as a consequence, we get a lot of people who haven't visited the temple before. Right? They haven't visited the temple. And what do they say? You know what they say? What do you think they say? Peaceful. They say, wow, this is such a peaceful place. Because they don't know all that goes on to create the atmosphere. They don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But, you see, we're engaged in devotional service and we go through the challenges. But it's not for our personal sense gratification, or it shouldn't be. Right? The service that we do for Krishna and the aspiration, the expectation, the completion, the successful completion of our service is done really for Krishna's pleasure, or really that's what it should be done for. Right? We're not performing our devotional service so that people will recognize us, so that we can become a prominent devotee. Devotee's already prominent. We'll all be prominent if we perform devotional service. So we shouldn't worry about, am I being recognized as the spiritually advanced person that I am? We shouldn't be worrying about these things. We should just be doing things for Krishna's pleasure. Then automatically all of us will become prominent. A devotee automatically becomes prominent. Why? Because they're sense controlled. Samodamastapaso cham. Right? Automatic, and this is, a group of people, or a group of devotees, a group of individuals that work together to serve Krishna, create a very peaceful and satisfied community of transcendentalists. And so automatically they all become famous because of that cooperation and that common sense of purpose. Right? We have a common sense of purpose. Our common sense of purpose is to save people from all of this distraction. Right? We're not against sex per se. Right? Unless you're a sannyasi or a brahmachari, you're in trouble. Lord Chaitanya, look what Lord Chaitanya did to Chota Haridas. But if these householder disciples were having family and children, he encouraged it and celebrated the birth of the children. Right? So, a lot of what we do, practically everything that we do is dependent on intent, right? The purpose for which we're doing something, and the context. The context determines a lot of what we're doing, and why we do it, the intent. So we are creating a community of like-minded devotees who are free from material motivation. It's called Anya Bilashita Shunyam Jnana Kamadyanavritam. It's pure devotees, right? And a pure devotee is not worried about themselves so much, because they know, if I serve Krishna what happens? What happens when you serve Krishna? What happens when you serve Krishna, Adi? Yeah, you get purified. What else? What happens when you serve Krishna?
He says Krishna is pleased.
Krishna's pleased, yes. And what happens to you? Become happy. Yes, why not? But, you get looked after. At least that's my experience. Anybody around here hungry? Missing out on meals? No. In COVID, I noticed at least half of my friends put on about 5 to 10 kilograms. I lost a few. Yeah, you get looked after. Especially when you're living in such a community of devotees where everybody is supportive and encouraging, and there's plenty to do. And that those activities are purifying. They're engaging here, or what does Prabhupada say? Bodily, mental, and intellectual behavior. There's a fully absorbing engagement in bhakti. How many of you are studying Bhakti Shastri? Yeah. Are you busy? Yeah, too much. Yeah. You've got children to... I know, towards the end of the previous term, I know that my Bhakti Shastri students could hardly wait for school to get started again. Right? Because they're sick of having the kids at home and having to do their homework. Right? Not easy. But plenty of engagement, plenty of service to perform, plenty of intellectual and mental stimulation for a devotee. It's really quite, full on, you may have noticed. Right? It's full on. In fact, we could probably relax a little bit. Children probably wouldn't mind. Right? Not too much, of course. We shouldn't relax too much, but we also have to be, there's such a thing as utsahat mayi, which is called puffed up with enthusiasm. Utsahat mayi, where we go too hard. So it's getting a balance. That takes time and a bit of experience. But it's part of our culture, actually. This, and why Srila Prabhupada put so much time into translating translating the Bhagavatam, translating the Chaitanya Charitamrita, translating Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, translating the Bhagavad Gita, so that we would have this emotional and intellectual engagement and be absorbed in that. So we got the param drishtva, the higher taste, and especially chanting. The chanting is essential because the chanting gives us the purification of consciousness to then be able to deeply absorb the philosophy that we read and understand how to apply it practically in our daily lives, so that when we get the distractions of the mobile phones and, all of the thing that social media and modern life throws at us, we're able to distinguish between that which is favorable for our bhakti and that which has to be avoided. Right? It's accepting that which is favorable and rejecting that which is unfavorable. An essential intellectual activity required for a devotee. So that when we're challenged, like Ajama was, instead of failing, we have to rise to the occasion. So instead of falling or pursuing material desires, we're able to control them or ignore them. Because the best way, Prabhupada mentions, and I'm not sure where I've read this story, but it's worth, if you're being pestered by, if you're being bothered by material desires, what's the best thing to do? Anybody got an idea? What do you do? I'm hungry.
Well, basically I was thinking about the Prabhupada's term when he said the proper engagement.
Yeah.
And the power of being protected in a nice, good association of devotees.
Yes.
That
Yep.
preserve you from.
Yep. But what happens if you've been bothered doing that and you're bothered by material inclinations enter into the mind? Chant Hare Krishna, yes. That's highly recommended. Yeah. Ignore it. Ignore it. If you're absorbing yourself deeply in all of these other activities and there's a psst, hey Bo, what about this? Just ignore it. It's in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Basically, we ignore it. And, there's the example, what happens when somebody comes and knocks on your door and you don't go and answer the door? What usually happens? They go away. Right? They go away. But we have to have developed our intellectual and emotional, even sensual strength. Right? This is why Prabhupada wanted the devotees to eat prasadam, eat nicely, so that you've got also emotional and physical, sensual strength to withstand the pushings. Bhajo vegam, manasakroda vegam, the urge to eat. Yes, we have the urge to eat. How do we engage it? By taking prasadam. You can tell I'm coming to the end of the class when I start talking about prasadam. Why do we take prasadam? Why do we take prasadam? Huh? To survive, yes. Also to satisfy that sensual need, to engage the senses. But we do it in a way that purifies, not unless we eat too much. Right? Acahara. Overeating, that's a danger for a devotee. So, yes, we want to remain under Krishna's protection. And avoid, these materially motivated desires. For most of us, that's fairly easy. What becomes difficult is some of the more subtle things. Profit, distinction, and adoration. These are also subtle desires that we need to watch out for. But again, we do that through this cultivation of learning, knowledge, and especially knowledge of the practice of bhakti, knowledge how to chant Hare Krishna properly so that the heart's becoming cleansed, the engagement in our bhajan so that we're always thinking. We're always thinking of the spiritual master, right? What is it? Jayam stuvam yasya trisandyam. Right? Vande Guru si charanaravinam. At least 3 times a day. 3 times a day, I remember my spiritual master. What's that referring to? Yasas Trisandyam. What do we do at the Trisandhya? Chant Gayatri mantra. Yeah, chant the mantras given by the Guru. And so then automatically, who are we remembering? Spiritual Master, Lord Chaitanya, Krishna and the gopis and the residents of Vrindavan. Interesting, isn't it? When we come to know Krishna, we discover that actually it's not Krishna. It's Krishna and Radharani and then all of the other devotees. It's quite interesting. We think it's just me and Krishna, mainly me. Then we discover, hang on a second, it's Krishna and then there's everybody else. And exploring those relationships. This is why bhakti is so engaging and so absorbing, is because it's so variegated, it's so engaging in it, all of the facets of devotional service, devotional practice. And we see that with here, the story of Ajamil. So we can learn from Ajamil's example, and that, you know, one really has to become deeply absorbed, because even Ajamil was qualified, but he wasn't able to withstand. So I guess, you know, one of the takeaways from this story is that you can also fail at doing this, right? But there's still benefit. There is no loss, right? And so even if we do fail, just pick yourself up and go back at it. Right? Don't let a stumble or two stop you. Right? And we see the benefits. The benefits were that at the time of death, Ajamil was able to remember the Lord. And so the Vishnu Dutas came to save him. And he got a second chance. We have that book, Second Chance. It's about this. It's from this story. But we've got the chance now, let's take advantage of it. Don't waste it, is really. And see if we can do better than Ajamil. Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions? Oh my. It's good to see you, by the way.
Devotees think like, oh, you're a great devotee.
What's that?
Like you had mentioned that you shouldn't think if other people are saying you're so advanced. Like you shouldn't worry about how they're thinking high good of you. So is that called pride?
Is it called pride? Can be. Can be a symptom of pride, thinking that you're a big guru or devotee, and that people should be doing what you tell them to do. Yep. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Substantially, it is. Because, you know, na janam na sundarim, right? This is our prayer. No wealth, no followers, no beautiful women, right?
Thank you, Prabhuji.
That's, what is it? Janmani Jamanishvare Bhavatan Bhakti Ahoitiki Tvai. Please give me, this is Lord Chaitanya's prayer, please give me Bhakti Ahoitiki Tvai, to you, right? Please give me, and what does Ahoitiki mean? What does Hetu mean in Sanskrit? What does it mean? Hetu. What does it mean? Cause. And ahoitiki or ahetu means without cause. Let my devotion be spontaneous, because that's actually the quality of bhakti is spontaneous. Because it's our natural position. Right? To serve Krishna is who we are, actually. But if we're motivated to get money or to get, what happens? What do the Hare Krishnas like to get? They like to see their name in the book points. Right? Who's number one book distributor? It's a competition between Dvija, I'll tell you who it is. It's Dvija Pitambara and Mahalakshmi. Right? Who's going to be... And we do this for a purpose. It's to encourage competition. Right? But actually, the goal of life is not to get the most book points. This is just it. It's a bit of a... We should treat it as it really is a bit of a game. It's not... It's to encourage service to Krishna. So, if we do get, we collect the most amount of money or we distribute the most number of books, that doesn't mean necessarily that we're the most advanced. It could mean that you're just a very good salesperson. Right? But we use it in Krishna's service, so it's fine. We've got to be careful about ensuring that our motivations for doing our service are such that it's meant for the pleasure of Krishna or it's meant for the pleasure of Krishna's devotees. And you can be sure that Srila Prabhupada is very pleased, when the devotees sell 5,000 book points. That's the equivalent of 2,500 Bhagavad Gitas. It's a lot of books going out.
In one day?
Huh?
In one day?
In a week. In a day? Yeah. When you go out, maybe that's what we'll get. When we get the crack troops out on book distribution, then that's what we'll be doing. But it's not easy. Who's here done book distribution?
I have.
Was it easy?
No.
Huh?
No.
It's amazing, isn't it? When you go out on book distribution, you can have the worst day of your life, right? Or on some days it's like you just tell people and they come over, they take a book, give you $50, and it's like you're the most empowered, you're the Shakti Avesh Avatara book distribution. Then the next day you go out, it's like you're the most miserable dog on the planet. So this is where, Sankirtan is very good for making spiritual advancement, because it teaches you how you're not the doer, Krishna's in control. It's very, very humbling. But yes, ahoitiki, this is our... And so we shouldn't be... And book distribution is very tricky because everything's going and then you get puffed up and you think, I'm a wonderful book distributor. I got the best score. I can hardly wait, they'll say, Aniruddha. 5 sets of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, quadzillion book points.
Zillion book points.
Right? Then the next day you go out and everybody says, go and get a job. or worse. Worse. I've gone on book distribution and some of the things that people have said to me, it's like, woohoo!
Not bad.
Go to Geelong. It used to be go to Geelong and you'd see these little old ladies, right? You think, oh, she's a sweet old lady. And they'd try to give her a book and the foul cursing that comes out of her mouth, it's like, wow! She's a little old witch. Of course, we look beyond all of the externals and we see the spirit soul. the spirit soul with a covering of with an interesting bodily covering. So, is that okay, Abai?
Yes.
Yes. And here's what happens. I'll tell you what happens when we are seeking profit, distinction, and adoration in our devotional service. Then we start to compete with others. And instead of being a society where we work cooperatively, then there becomes a competition, and we undermine with that competition cooperation.
Yeah, because it's like a movement. We're supposed to work together.
What's that?
It's like a movement, so we're supposed to work together.
Yeah, yes, it becomes... then we just become like the materialists. We don't want to do that. You have a question?
Thank you, Prabhuji.
You said that you should when should we work our phones? When should they because you said they distract us. So when should you use those phones?
I didn't say you shouldn't use it. I said you have to be very careful using it. Right?
So when you're careful, so what should you do
What should you do with the phone?
Yeah.
Well, turn it off in a Bhagavatam class. Highly recommended. What should you do with a mobile phone? I recommend using it for telephone calls. I find that that's highly useful. And practically everything else is useless. Right, realistically, responding to emails on your phone? No. A keyboard. Right? Maybe scanning for things to do and flicking things off, getting rid of stuff. But email, they're not very good for doing email, really, realistically. I get a lot of emails and I just click, 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 and then press delete. Gone. But with this, you've got to go... and,
Yeah.
Now, what else do we... browsing the internet. If you're looking for, something that you need, you're out driving around or whatever, very, very handy. But, research, nah. Where are you going to store the bits of information? Facebook? Yeah, nah. Right? Have you heard of yeah, nah? It's Australian. When you think about it, mobile phone is not a lot of... I tell you what I've got ridden of all of my other cameras. So one thing that has been put into a mobile phone that I highly recommend is a phone that's got good cameras. Because now I can take pictures of almost anything and boom, I can share it. Because, a picture taken and not shared, you might as well have not taken a picture, right? So, I had big cameras, long lenses, and could take lots of pictures, but then it takes hours to sort through all of those and put them onto your computer, and then after 24 hours, you finally get your picture up. This is the lament of most photographers, professional photographers. In the meantime, they've lugged around all of their camera gear, taken pictures, and in the meantime, their wife has already got as good a picture up on Facebook, and all of her friends are saying, "Oh, that's a fantastic picture." And yours is still stuck in your fancy camera. So that's one good thing, taking pictures. But that's about it, I think. Anybody else? You can think of a good use of a mobile phone?
So what apps should you have?
What apps? Dear me, as few as possible.
Should we have special or material apps?
What's that?
Should we have database and all of them? Or like, or should we have?
Yeah, that's good. You know, one good thing is you can have the Veda base. So you know, if you tuck on, somewhere you can read Prabhupada's books.
Or should we have like? Or should we have like Instagram and Facebook?
If you must. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't use Instagram. I use Facebook sparingly. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? We can have a chat about mobile phone apps later. One of my most used apps is an app that tells me when the sanjyas are, when sunrise, when noon is, solar noon, and when sunset is. That's one of my most used apps. So that's good. So you know when you have to say your Gayatri. Anybody else? Comment? Question? Madhu Manjari.
I was meditating a little bit about they wanted to say ignore it when the desires, material desires come.
Yep.
And thank you. As a better strategy, ignore them. What about if we are not strong enough to ignore them?
If we what?
We are not strong enough
To ignore them.
and it's so overwhelming.
I think that's why we've got the story of Ajamil.
Yeah, I was analyzing that in the sense that, for example, what would be something that can help him? If in his case, for example.
My experience is that if you have a strong bhajan, then what surfaces in the mind is the Gurvashtikam, right? The Goswami Ashtakam, if you're chanting it regularly, or if you're chanting the Bhagavad Gita, the verses of the chapter that you chanted that day. And so that tends to crowd out the other distractions, right? Why hearing and chanting is so important, because smaranam, Vishnu smaranam, comes from repeated Shravanam Kirtanam, right? And so if our bhajan, if we have a bhajan of, say, a few hours in the morning or sometime in the day, and you know why Prabhupada had morning program, evening program, then what happens is, even if there is the emergence of some material inclination, if it's really serious, then usually, you know, what happens? We'll engage it, but in such a way so that it's purifying. But if it's just a minor, you know, disturbance, we'll just be able to ignore it because of all of the other remembrance of Krishna. Is that right?
Yeah, for another, in another point you mentioned in the class also the benefit of creating nice cooperative environment and a good association of devotees, this community.
Yes, yes.
So I was trying to relate those points in the sense that, yes, we need to endeavor, and as a practicing devotees, perhaps we are not strong enough yet, but we can have that support system from a good Vaishnava association, that right, when we have those kind of small deviations in the beginning, we can rise up from there.
Yeah, that's what we want in ISKCON Melbourne.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that's what we want in ISKCON broadly.
That's right.
Right? And we're fortunate, I think, you're all aware that in our community there's a lot of support and a lot of encouragement and a lot of engagement. Right? And it's supportive, generally supportive. It's primarily supportive. And
in the case of Rajamila, for example, it would be different for him if he will trust or share his mind with somebody, a good friend, and that it wouldn't be.
Point. Yeah.
Yeah.
He is by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a really good point. And I think, we need to meditate on this, because if we see one of the devotees struggling with these anarthas, which we will do, right? It's historically demonstrated that we'll see devotees will struggle with the gross and also with the subtle. If you look at the history of ISKCON, we've seen it. It's happened to us. Some of us have lived through periods where it's been a major problem in ISKCON, where the leaders of our community fell down because of struggling with some of these anarthas. Right? We've seen it. And after analysing these situations, we identified in many cases that they were isolated from being so advanced, right? But not actually, but being elevated by everybody else, they became victimised by their own isolation, even though in the community of devotees. Interesting, right? You can be in the community of devotees yet isolated from them when you're pretending that you're somebody that you're not, realistically. Good point. Yeah, and that's the advantage of having why we should associate with the devotees, is because then we get an opportunity, if we have some, difficulties or some challenges or some nagging material desires, your friends can say, cut it out, it's insignificant, forget about it, right? Put you in perspective. Who do you think you are, you little shrimp? They'll cut you down to size. This is one of the advantages of the association of the devotees, is that they'll say, cut it out, will you? Who do you think you are? When our philosophy is, we're a, what is it? Anu. Not Vibhu. We like to think of ourselves as Vibhu. And actually, we're just little. So our friends will remind us, hey, Prabhu, I think you're going a bit far here, take it easy. When I get worked up, especially in management, I don't know if you've noticed, but I get worked up about stuff. And I push like anything to see things are done, I like to see things done perfectly. And if people don't do it perfectly, I can get pretty hot under the collar. So my friends say, look, will you just cut it out? Cool it. So I have to go and, take a cold shower. Of course, if you know me, that doesn't usually work. I'll be back at it again next week. But of course, Prabhupada also wanted us to have high standards, by the way. It's very interesting. When Prabhupada was on his deathbed, effectively, in Vrindavan, what was one of his main worries? Do you know what one of Prabhupada's main worries was? Well, a couple actually, but one in particular, specific. What's that? No, people say that, but if you look at Prabhupada's teachings, it wasn't. So there's places where Prabhupada says Varnashram is not important, right? But no, two things. Well, one is, will ISKCON continue? Will it be successful? This was his worry. But one of them specific was the ringing of the bell in Vrindavan at the right time, for the right number of times. Right? The ringing of the bell. And one of the reasons why the ringing of the bell in Vrindavan is now at the right time, the right number of times, is because Prabhupada put so much emphasis on it at that time. Because he was lying in his bed and he would hear it. And he would check. Why aren't they ringing the bell? Why aren't they ringing the bell? Right? And I'm thankful for that. I remember one year, you probably heard me tell this story before, but one year, Achincha Rupa and I went to Vrindavan for the VIHE, 1989. And when we got there, our watches had stopped. Right? And you had to, you had a sadhana chart, and you had to get to Mangalati, and you tick off all of the attendance at all of the program, right? Because you got a score for good sadhana. So I remember waking, hearing the bell at 1 o'clock. Oh, 1 o'clock. And then hearing the bell at 2 o'clock. And thinking, only 2 more hours. And then 3 o'clock. Then 4 o'clock. Okay, time to get up, take a bath, go to Mangalati, right? So we really, that was the only way we could tell the time, because our watches had stopped. And then what happened was, when we left Vrindavan, I remembered, I left my watch in my case. I pulled in my briefcase. So I pulled my watch out, and have a guess what happened? The watch had started, and it was on the right time. And then Achincha Rupa went, she found her watch, and her watch had started, and it was also on the right time. So time is different in Vrindavan. Okay, let's finish. Grantarab Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki jai, Hare Krishna. And nice to see all of you here this morning.